Do you feel like you're paying too much in taxes every year, or have a relationship with your current CPA where you only meet them once or just before tax time? Look, I want you to know that there is another solution to paying less in taxes and keeping more of your money. Valard Advisors is a leading fractional CFO and CPA firm that specializes in advanced tax strategies for founders, athletes, and entrepreneurs. Valard Advisors can help you navigate the complexity of business taxes and ensure that you're paying the least amount in tax possible. But this is far more than tax preparation. This is strategy. This is really getting into the data-driven decisions that your business needs to make in order to develop a long-term strategy that aligns for your business and personal goals. Whether you're looking to minimize tax liability, maximize your deductions, or plan for your financial future, Valard Advisors has the expertise and experience to help you get there. Do not wait until tax season. Work with professionals today. Contact Valard Advisors to schedule a consultation. So is there maybe people that are just listening and they're like, I want to make some small changes. What are some of the first things I can do?
I think the first thing is you have to be honest with yourself of just how you are as a person. What do you think will work best for you? Mm-hmm. And then once you have that, then that really is going to determine the next step of action. Folks look for a solution so often.
Yes.
Like what is the one solution? Mm-hmm. And really so many of these things, the answer is, well, what's going to work for you? Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Generation Wealth. I'm Candy Valentino, and I've been building businesses and generating wealth before I could legally order a drink. For more than 2 decades, I've built, scaled, acquired, and exited businesses, all while investing in real estate and building financial freedom. Now I want to help you expand your wealth and give you the proven roadmap to implement today. It doesn't matter if you're a part of Generation X, Generation Y, or Gen Z. It is time to join Generation Wealth. Now let's get started. All right, guys, I am so excited for this interview because I get to share my friend with you, Dr. David Boyd. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited too because I know we get to talk about so many things that maybe we talk about behind the scenes, and now we get to bring it to everyone. But I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I just got to say that right out of the gate. And I don't say that often on the show, but I love what you're doing because I think there is such a need, because obviously most people think about health and they're like, how does this relate to wealth? But what's the saying? A person that has good health has many wishes, but the person who has bad health has one. Yeah. And so I think that as we talk about wealth and success in business, this is a important conversation. And what you used to do compared to what you do now at Blindspot, what you used to do was you were in the healthcare system, which I always say is kind of like the sick care system.
Yep.
With being in oncology and a physician there. And so I want to just talk a little bit about what your life was like there, and then we'll transition into what you're doing now because I think it's so unique.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I didn't see it when I was in it. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that I was like just a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
And I remember it pretty vividly. So I'm not an oncologist. My background is I'm family medicine. I'm a primary care doctor. But I was working at one of the major cancer centers here in Phoenix. And I remember I was attending morbidity mortality. So what that is a lot of academic centers will have these meetings that usually like once a month or once a quarter or something, where if something happened with a patient, where either they died or they didn't do as well as expected, basically all the doctors get together, they present the case in a very academic manner, like, here's the initial presentation, they go over the pathology slides, the imaging, the labs, et cetera, and then talk about the course of, how things went versus how really they should have gone instead. Mm-hmm. And my role at the cancer center was I was one of the first doctors that the incoming patients would meet. So I was I would establish rapport quickly, figure out what's going on, and then whatever workup needed to happen so that way the medical and surgical oncologists could focus on their portion of the pie. And so you get to know people really well.
Yeah.
And I'm very much a relationship person. That's why I went into medicine in the first place.
How can you build building relationships in traditional healthcare has to be somewhat hard, right?
It is.
Because I know Anthony's dad, sister, brother are all doctors. And it's every 7-8 minutes. I don't know what the stat is now, but it seems like you're just perpetually trying to get people through because they don't pay what they used to. And in the healthcare system, how is it hard to really deliver quality care in such a short period of time?
Well, you can't is really the answer, because you think most kind of gone are the days where doctor graduates from residency and hangs up a shingle and starts their practice.
Yeah.
Even if they do nowadays, there's still insurance companies really run the game.
Yeah.
So the payers pay less and less for each visit. So the only solution becomes see more and more people to basically make the same amount of money that you made the year before.
So you're just trying to get people in, get people out.
Yep.
And volume. It becomes a volume game.
Becomes a volume game.
Then you have to make decisions so quickly with very limited information. So what I love what you do now is like fast forward to you obviously were in that world. Now you're doing the complete opposite, like high touch, high involvement. I mean, you took care of my dad. I asked him before we did this if I could share, and he said yes. So, you did your incredible protocol on my dad. And I think this is I just want to tell a little bit about the story because I think it gives context. Talk about what you're talking about in a hospital setting. As you know, but my audience might not. My dad was in a severe motorcycle accident. I had to quit everything I was doing and fly back to be with him. And in that hospital setting, if he didn't have someone advocating for his care every minute of every day, he would have got lost in the shuffle like I saw so many people did. And like there were valid things that he needed, like quality care that he wasn't getting. I had to go find somebody and be like, hey, he didn't get his pill that he was supposed to get, or, hey, he hasn't had his bandage changed, or, and so it's shocking to me, and maybe this is just my perception, but it's shocking to me the quality of care that people get in hospitals. Is it really that bad? Or do I just have a jaded view of it, that there's just not enough doctors for the patients that are in there to provide the quality care that they need?
I think really what the answer is that the system, and what you got to see firsthand, unfortunately, is severely broken. And everybody is really trying to do their best with limited resources. So it's not that, bad doctors, bad nurses, but that's not the case. It's just that there's overwhelm.
Yeah.
And just like anything in life, when you're overwhelmed, are you able to deliver at a high level? No, of course not.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate you got to see it.
Yeah, because it's like there were so many good people, but they were just pulled in so many different directions. And obviously, the healthcare system works for tragic things like that, right? Like you have a severe accident, you're bleeding, go get stitched up, get fixed up, things like that. So, but for most things that people are trying to do, which is why I love what you did for my dad, was obviously he had this acute issue, but what he also had underlying was heart disease, because in 2014 he had a heart attack in front of me, and he really wasn't getting continued care. And because I don't live by him, it's kind of hard to control that. But I would say, like, Dad, did you get it? Oh yeah, they did blood work. Oh yeah, we did a checkup. But he really wasn't doing what he should have been doing. And we didn't even realize that until he saw you. So can you explain, I mean, for anyone listening to this, like, it is incredible to have a doctor come to your living room and show you scans of, like, I got to see my dad's brain from the inside and all of his major organs. And we got to see his heart in a way that you cannot see on a stress test or any other type of imaging. Can you break down a little bit of the uniqueness of what you're doing in Blindspot and how you're helping people literally identify their blind spots before they have a problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So we look at it two different ways, the macro and the micro. So on the macro side is a lot of imaging. So like your dad, he had about 40,000 pictures is what we took between, we basically imaged his entire body minus his arms and legs, it's very extensive. And we intentionally go searching in those areas where you see the most common problems. So the most common things that you see in the United States, heart disease, stroke, cancer, Alzheimer's, I mean, those are really the biggies. And the amazing thing is that these things are preventable, or at the very least, if you catch them early enough, the outcome can be dramatically different.
Tell us how they're preventable.
Well, example for you, American diet, not the best. We have, if you look at the number of folks that were overweight, even in like the 1980s versus now. Like I have vague memories. I'm 45. I have vague memories of when I was a kid. It's like you always had like the heavy aunt or uncle, but it wasn't so many people.
Yeah.
And now it's almost commonplace.
Yeah. So true.
So because so much of our diet is very heavily processed, you know? So with that, there's calories. They're much easier to pack into small meals. So smaller meal, higher calorie. And now there's an app on your phone. You can get it brought directly to you, right?
Oh,
it's like easier than ever.
Yeah.
So you combine all of these things with, it's now commonplace that you sit behind a desk for your 9 to 5. You know, there's not really, get up and move around. It's, and then you could go further down the rabbit hole where even in our schools, we're educating folks to this is the way it's supposed to be, where you go, after high school, you go to college, and now great. Now you're in debt. Now you got to work.
Yeah, right.
Now you got to sit at that 9 to 5 desk.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
And just have lunch delivered to your desk. I mean, we're creating the problem.
Yeah.
So we've really created this issue of heart disease.
It's such a great point, because it literally is a behavior.
Yeah.
And it is something that you are learning as a child. Like, obviously I had teenage parents, right? So we were just eating pizza and ho-hos, because when you're 16 and 19, what do you want?
Yeah.
Pizza and ho-hos.
Absolutely.
So when you have a kid, we're having pizza and ho-hos. I mean, I used to drink, this is so embarrassing to tell you this. My mom every morning would drink Diet Pepsi. And I just thought that's what everybody did. So from the time I was like 15 until I was probably 21 to know better, I would have Diet Pepsi as like my coffee every morning. I mean, that's all that aspartame, those chemicals and color, but you just don't know what you don't know. And I think that's why these conversations are so important. So talking a little bit about diet, this is another thing. There's so much contradicting information out there. There's the latest fads all the time, right? No matter what. There's Atkins and South Beach, and now it's carnivore and Lion and all these other things. And that's going to cyclically go away at some point too. Yeah. What do we know? What do you understand by looking at all of these images? I mean, you saw my dad's heart, his brain, his spleen, like all of his broken bones. You were able to see like, oh, you've got all broken ribs. And that was from the accident.
Look at that. You're asymmetrical on one side.
All your transverse processes are broke up because that's where the car hit him. So it was really amazing to see. But looking at all of this information, it gives you so much data.
Yeah.
What are we able to conclude that is a healthy lifestyle and a diet for people to maintain?
So it's going to be different for everybody, but very similar too.
Okay.
And the thing is that, I think we have this tendency where we want, okay, what's the answer going to be? And it's going to be like this amazing complex thing. It's super simple.
Okay.
It's getting the right amount of sleep. It's controlling stress. It's staying well hydrated. It's trying to eat clean about 80% of the time, and then you have to live a little. What's life without a ho-ho now and then?
Yeah, right. So just not every day.
Just not every day. So it's all of those things. And that's really what it comes down to. And I mean, there's going to be a bunch of folks that are like, well, this diet's better than that. If you actually look at the studies, if you trace them out between, I think the main ones that they looked at were like Atkins or mostly protein versus paleo versus Mediterranean versus American Heart, which is basically just healthy eating. And if you trace all of them out in terms of like weight loss and overall health, after 18 months, they're all at the same endpoint.
That's fascinating. Endpoint of what? People have the same result?
Have the same result.
Wow.
So there you go. Really what the answer is, the best diet is the cleanest one that you can actually stick to.
That's interesting. So when my dad had his heart attack, immediately, my dad was a hunter and a big meat eater. He would have these Otis Spunkmeyer cupcakes. The cupcake. There was like a muffin or something. And when I remember I was like, Dad, there's 66 grams of fat in a muffin.
Right.
And he would have one every day, and he would have Turner's iced tea, which is like sweet tea. So when he had a heart attack, they were like, no meat. But they didn't address a lot of the processed grains, which all the data, and again, I'm no expert, but the data that I've been reviewing is just that there's a lot of downside about all of the folate that's in grains and just the way that it's processed and the way that our body doesn't. So they didn't address that. Is that something that people should be cautious of as well, depending on whatever diet they're doing? Like, are there just a couple, say, 5 things you want to minimize in your diet? Yeah.
I mean, so, I look at it in a pretty common sense approach. And I was having this conversation with a colleague of mine he's a gastroenterologist. And he made some really good points. And I thought about it. I was like, wow, he's right. So you think about like dairy, for example, right? So, and mind you, I love cheese. Like, I'm a foodie. I love cheese. I love all that stuff. But if you think about it, like, isn't it kind of weird that we would ingest the breast milk of another animal?
It's so weird.
It's weird, right?
It's so weird.
So when you really think about it, it's like, okay, well, where did this come from? Well, it's an industry.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
So it's an industry that was created, I don't know when, probably like early 1900s or something. I don't know.
I think it was the 50s is when it started to get really commercialized.
Really catching on.
Yeah.
Like I remember that. I remember my grandmother had a, what was it? A Betty Crocker cookbook, right? And when she had passed and we were going through her things, whatever, I remember looking through this cookbook. I was probably a teenager at the time. And there were ingredients for like, make sure you use carnation evaporated milk. For blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like I was, and looking back now, I was like, this whole thing was one big sales letter.
Whole sales letter.
You know?
It's amazing.
And so when you look at it as, if you like take a step back and look at it kind of as an industry, then you would say, well, we don't really need dairy. It was part of that whole food pyramid thing that's kind of fallen apart nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, but that was in there. Whole wheat. I mean, you can't like, I'm no farmer, but I don't think you can actually like go up to just like take a piece of wheat and eat it. I think it needs to be processed.
Right.
Like ground down into a powder and so forth and so on. So it's like, if you take a step back and you look at things in a more common sense approach, where it's like, well, what are we supposed to actually eat? You know, why do we have the teeth that we have and so forth? And then personal preference on top. I think that's how you can really get away from having heavily processed stuff.
Yeah.
So what I tell my patients is, do your best. Try not to eat anything out of a bag, out of a box, and ask yourself if it's been made by God. And if it hits those three criteria, it's probably pretty good for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's like, it is. It's almost like if you can just be self-aware enough to not have strong opinions and just look at it as a whole, we are able to look at even like meat as a culture. I know a lot of people like that, and there's a whole movement around meat nowadays. And as you know, I'm plant-based, so I've been for decades. And to me, it just doesn't make sense. Like, could the body process it? Sure. But the levels of which it's produced now because of billion-dollar companies, there's no way that we could sustain that in the wild. So I just don't know. Again, I'm not an expert. I just don't think the body is supposed to break that down frequently. I feel like anything in moderation, right? But it's like the 80-20 rule. Yeah. What is 80%? I mean, I like cookies, like gluten-free vegan cookies, but like I might have that once a week, if that. 80% of the time, I'm eating whole foods that are alive, that are grown, that were once a vegetable or a fruit or a legume or a nut or something like that. And I think that, especially now, I've lost a lot of weight because through my book, I put on a bunch of weight. So now I'm just kind of, people go, oh, you lost weight. No, I'm just actually back to where I should have been. But through the book, I was doing that. DoorDash is so easy. Uber Eats is so easy. And I think we don't realize what it's laden in. The oils, too, I think isn't addressed. Can you talk about maybe someone that's watching what they're eating now, but they're still going out a lot. They're maybe door dashing a lot, and they don't understand some of the palm oils and what the oil actually does to the cells and into your body. Can you explain that a little bit? So
it's one of these things where I saw a bunch of like Instagram clips of like, don't use this oil, don't use that, and I really didn't understand why. So I spoke with my ex-wife, who's a registered dietitian. And a food scientist. I did my own little just research, like why? What's the real issue?
Yeah.
And it comes down to smoke point. So smoke point is basically the temperature at that which an oil will burn.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's that burning that actually causes carcinogens. And that's the problem, is the carcinogens. So I was like, okay, well, this makes sense. So then what's the smoke point? And most oils, it's like their smoke point's usually like around 400, 500 degrees. Like most of them are 500 and up. So there's a lot of, at least to my knowledge, there's not a whole lot of data for if it's under the smoke point of it necessarily being carcinogenic. I'm no expert in the matter by any means, but that's why I still cook with olive oil.
Right.
Just because.
But not canola oil.
Yeah, but not canola. Yeah. Just because canola is more heavily processed.
Yeah.
And it's a mixture of things.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll cook with olive oil. It's healthy for you. It's healthy fats and such. That's usually what I stick to. But there's preference. There's some folks that use like coconut oil or palm oil or what have you.
Yeah. And when you look at, like obviously when we did my dad's scans, we saw that he had is it plaque or cholesterol or something in his arteries again, which, by the way, he was actually today going to the cardiologist again to get that looked at, which I was super happy. So just so everyone's aware of what happens is Dr. David will actually give you the stuff to take back to your regular doctor, or you can actually continue to work with him, or a hybrid of the two if you need a cardiologist or gastroenterologist. How do you say that?
Gastroenterologist, yeah.
It's a big word. And so he's taking that scan back because that's a point of reference that most people don't get to see. Yeah. And we got to see way down in that, what's the heart? What is it? The artery?
Coronary arteries.
Yeah, coronary artery. Yeah. It was pretty plugged up, for lack of a better word, down towards the bottom. What are some of the things that, like, when you see these maybe 3 common things of all the scans that you've done, what are some of the 3 common things that you find that busy, high-performing entrepreneurs don't really think about, and that maybe they either have to make some behavior change or address?
So I'll give it to you in from low to high. Okay. So I would say the first one is that their hormones are off. So that's on the micro side.
Because you're probably seeing them over 40-ish, and that's kind of when all of our hormones start to fluctuate a little bit.
And you have to kind of look at the demographic too. So I work with high level entrepreneurs and CEOs, some former professional athletes and such, that these folks go hard. Like they've gone hard for a long time. And the things that we do in our 20s and 30s to kind of get to where we are, by the time you start hitting your 40s, those things don't work anymore. And that's when you have to change the game and really take a step back and say, okay, wait a minute, let me take evaluation of where I'm at. So I've been surprised, like, how many men and women come in that especially their sex hormones, so testosterone, estrogen, cortisol levels, that they're pretty jacked up.
Can you see cortisol and adrenal and that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah. And so, I mean, you get an idea of, like, now those are numbers, but then you pair those numbers to how someone's feeling, and so we have a pretty extensive questionnaire that will correlate those two things. So that's probably the most common that I see. And that's one of those ones where you make some behavior changes, you lean into the biooptimization side of things, which is absolutely crazy that this exists even nowadays. Like these are the things that for your viewers and listeners, when you consider that nowadays folks have access to a level of healthcare that it used to be like celebrities, dignitaries, senators, royal family members. They have access to this now. Yeah. It's just they're sold on this idea, well, you have to pay this insurance premium every month.
I know.
You have to stay in the lane. You have, you have to do this, instead of taking responsibility and saying for their own health and saying, you know what, I choose myself. And I'm going to get the facts, and I'm going to build the life that I want, really from a solid foundation.
Yeah, going against societal norms.
Going against it. Yeah.
But it's the difference, in my opinion. That's what preventative care, health care should be, as opposed to sick care.
100%.
And again, I'm not I know so many great nurses and doctors, and we need them in the medical field for a lot of things.
Yes.
But there are some things that we can prevent by getting the information. I know I had an executive physical when I was 33. So back where I'm originally from, there's a place called Greenbrier, and no, not the drug treatment facility, but this was a resort. And this resort had an executive physical. I went there for 2 days. I stayed, and I got a bone density test and hormones and all of these different things. And that actually is what put me on, I started lifting weights in my 30s and got in really great shape, because I learned that I had the bone density. I might have this wrong. My age of my bones were 44, even though I was 33. And they were I said, well, what can I do to stop that? Because I'm already short. I can't get any shorter. And they said, well, you can drink milk. And I'm like, that makes no sense to me, because there's nothing that supports that we need milk in our diet. Because like you said, we're not drinking another species milk, breast milk. And then the other thing was bodybuilding, lifting, getting more muscle mass to protect your bones. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And from that, it changed everything. And if I wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't be, I don't think, as healthy as I am now. I started going really strict plant-based, a lot of raw vegan type foods. And it really changed everything. So I think what you're doing is so valuable. And I don't know that necessarily, that's a common thing, bone density.
It is.
Is it really? Get out.
Yes, for sure. Especially for women.
Wow.
And especially for more petite women.
Wow.
So it's one of these things where, we don't have a crystal ball, but you want to try to look ahead of like, okay, what could this person possibly die from? Right? And when you were 33, to try to predict that around 80, that's kind of hard to do. But there's trends that you can look for. You can say, okay, well, this is a petite female. So we already know her risk of osteoporosis is going to be higher. And we also...
I didn't know that. So just when you're petite, that you have a higher risk of that
higher risk.
Opposed to someone that's taller.
As someone who's bigger.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so not just height, size.
Size,
okay,
too.
Got it.
Because you figure this way, that skeletal load is basically, it's carrying around extra muscle mass, extra weight, so forth and so on if someone's bigger. So because of that, that's more strain on the bones. So they'll be stronger.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then you look also, well, okay, in this same population, so let's say women in their 80s, what do they die most of? And surprisingly, one of the
falls, right?
Falls.
Oh, get out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So hip fractures.
Yeah.
Now, we don't exactly know why when someone falls and fractures a hip, usually they die within the same year.
It's probably because they went to the hospital.
Maybe. I don't know.
Sorry.
But it's like, even after it's been like fixed, they usually die within the same year.
Wow, that's crazy.
So again, if you just take the data points that we do know, and by the way, insurance company knows all this stuff. So insurance companies... I have no love for insurance companies. They compile data on people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's basically this running prediction based on each data point. Whenever somebody goes and gets a lab or has a medicine that's written for them, it goes into that file, and an algorithm is run of like, okay, when is this person possibly going to die? And they're so good at it, they can predict it within about a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But do they say anything to the person? No. The whole point is to protect their investment. Because this person is paying monthly premiums. That's the way they know when to increase a premium, when to drop somebody, all that.
Wow.
It's. I know I'm going off on a tangent.
No,
but
it's good.
It's one of these things where it's like, if people really knew how this whole system worked, I think there'd be like an uproar. Because it's so shady. It's 100% legal. And almost everybody is bought into it, whether they like it or not.
Right.
Because if you don't have health insurance, God forbid, car accident or something, it'll wipe out somebody financially.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So it's like you're forced, you're funneled into this system.
Oh, my gosh. And if we want to take it, just because we're on this topic, do you think, this is just a question, do you think that the reason it's so shady and the reason that it's so legal, because these are billion-dollar companies that also... Trillions is true. Yeah,
you figure it this way. I mean, wherever there's trillions of dollars flowing, there's some backdoor shady things happening.
Absolutely.
There has to be. This is the way the world works.
Yeah. And that's my opinion is anytime you have that and you want to have change and you want to have laws, when you have trillions, billions, a lot of money in any lobbyist's pocket that can make this stuff legal or mandated, that's why we all participate in it.
Yep.
And it's just a shame, like, especially if they can determine when someone can die and you don't use that to protect a population and that person and that family, like that should be illegal to have that information and not have to share it.
Exactly.
But I know we went down this and I love this topic, but I know everyone's wanting us to finish the 3.
Yes.
So hormones was the low. What's the next one?
So hormones. The next one is when we scan folks' brains. And so we find a lot of things. And so especially with high performers, you see migrainous changes. So whether folks have migraine headaches or not, you can actually look to see whether those changes have been made. Sometimes you find, they're called microvesicular change. So basically, it's not a stroke, but it's basically changing of blood vessels, almost premature aging of the brain.
Wow.
Sometimes you see early Alzheimer plaques that are coming about.
Oh, wow.
Which these are things that when you catch them early enough, that just like you implemented with lifting weights based on your DEXA scan, on these other scans and so forth, you can also start implementing change that, will affect someone, 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
So if that is the case with the brain scan, is it food? Is it mental focus? What are some of the things, like if I were to get one right now and you're like, okay, you're what is it, predetermined to have Alzheimer? Or I remember when you saw my dad's brain and you said it's actually, for his age, it didn't like shrink very much.
Yeah.
So that was actually a great thing. But had it been, what are some of the recommendations?
So more cognitive activities.
Okay.
So getting to know your dad, like I spent the whole day with him. So getting to know your dad, like he's wheeling and dealing all the time.
All the time.
So it's like he's constantly running calculations and this and that. And I mean, we had fantastic conversations. That's what's keeping his brain like nice and healthy.
Active.
Versus to go back to the model that we're sold. Well, okay, well, now you're 65. Now you get to retire and live the life you want. Go sit on the couch and wither away and don't really think about anything.
Yep.
And when you scan the folks that have gone down that road, their brains are literally smaller.
Because it's like it's like a muscle in a sense, right? I mean, you don't use your bicep, it's going to wither away.
It atrophies.
Wow. So that's the same thing that's happened in the brain.
Yeah.
It's just that it's under the skull, so you can't visibly see it.
You got it. And physically that predisposes folks to issues, because it makes sense if you think about it. If the brain gets smaller, well, now there's more space between the skull and the brain. So we already talked about falls really can damage people when they're elderly. So it's a very common thing for someone to fall, knock their head. The brain can shift back and forth now in the skull.
Oh, wow.
Almost
like a concussion would.
Yes.
Right?
And it tears, they're called bridging veins, tears the bridging veins where they can then bleed into the brain. That's a hemorrhagic stroke.
Wow.
And our behavior patterns help to predispose these things.
Teaching people to do that. That's what they should want as their ultimate goal in life. Are there, aside from that cognitive behavior and activity, are there supplements that someone could take or different foods to help, because you hear like St. John, there's always a new supplement that's supposed to support. Are there any that actually work or that are slightly maybe good based on the studies?
The biggest thing is with what we were talking about originally, good healthy diet, keeping stress low, sleeping well, that's really what does the trick.
Physical exercise. Yeah. I don't know if this is supported with medical studies, but I always say like sunshine, like me just even getting out 20 minutes with my dog in the morning, like completely.
Breathe some fresh air.
Yeah. It's like, it's huge. So we've got hormones.
Yep.
We've got what would you call that? Like brain changes?
Yeah, I'd say brain changes. It's a good way. And the first one, the number one thing, this has actually really surprised me.
Okay.
Because there's nothing in the medical data that says like this is a regular thing.
And this is like entrepreneurs, high achievers, high performers for context.
So we're talking about high performing entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And I've seen this, to give you an idea, these are like mostly like, multiple 7-figure folks. I mean, they've been going hard for years. And I've continually found a dilated aortic root. Now, what this is. So the heart, the aorta is the main blood vessel that comes right off of the heart. Okay, so this is the main blood vessel. This thing goes, there's no call 911. I mean,
this would be like a massive cardiac arrest, no coming back. Not
even. It's more along the lines of, think of like a water balloon popping.
Okay.
I mean, it's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was actually, you may not be old enough to remember this. Three's Company. Do you remember that TV show?
I'm only a year younger than you.
Okay. So Three's Company. So John Ritter, the guy that was on Three's Company.
Yes.
This was, I don't know, like within the last decade or so. He was doing like an on-stage production of something. And he literally was on stage and was like, my chest hurts, dead.
Oh my gosh.
And this was a ruptured aortic aneurysm.
Wow.
And this is how they go. So it's very.
And this is the most common thing you've seen.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I'm not seeing at the rupture point, thank God.
Yeah.
We're finding them early where we're seeing a dilation that's occurring. And so when this dilation occurs, it basically can expand to a point where once it gets to a certain point, that's when you have to say, okay, wait a minute.
So explain a dilation and what happens.
So think of it kind of like a garden hose.
Okay.
Okay. So if you've ever cut a hose in half, you see there's multiple layers to the hose. There's the inside layer, which is really the strongest. And then you have kind of a layer in between, the in-between layer. And then you have the outside layer, which is really what, if you were to open a person.
The green part.
The green part, yeah. It's the part that you can see.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a tear that occurs more so on that inside layer.
Okay.
So you're already starting to have it be compromised.
So you can see on the inside of that artery through the scan.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you can start to see where there's a tear that's occurring.
And my dad didn't have that, right?
He did not. No.
He had all the thickening almost of the, what is it? Not the opposite of thickening, but like when it gets tight, constricted.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He had,
so this is different.
He had stenosis.
Okay.
And he had, is it okay to talk about
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
He's cool with that? Yeah. He had, I mean, but he's had heart disease for a while.
Yeah.
You know, and he's been on appropriate treatment for a while too.
Yep.
So had he not had the treatment that he had, it'd be a very different outcome for him.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. So the people that have the dilation, if it's left for what, 10 years, 20 years,
sometimes
it could kill you?
Potentially.
Wow.
Sometimes it could never expand. Sometimes it expands quickly. You don't really know. And so then it stands to reason, well, why in the heck is it there? Like why there? Like why, and it's usually in the same location, which is the crazy thing.
So crazy.
Right where it's coming off of the arch, right where the arch of the aorta is, where it's coming off of the heart. Wow. And the only thing that I can really, because I really sat and thought about this, like what could the potential be? And the only thing that there really could be is like if there's enough blood pressure changes. So not necessarily chronic high blood pressure, which, you know, that's a whole other issue. Chronic high blood pressure, we call it the silent killer for a reason, because you don't really feel symptoms because it slowly increases. And so you get used to the pressure.
Okay.
You don't really notice the symptoms until it's either too late, heart attack or stroke, or it's caught on a physical, or you're going to the drugstore and you put your arm through one of those, you know, blood pressure cuffs while you're waiting, something like that. So why would this happen in particularly these high performing individuals? And the only thing I can come to is that when you think about the pressure that they're under, so reel this back a second, you know, the former Super Bowl champion that is, you know, they're a trained athlete, but here they're going to perform in front of 30,000 people. Is their blood pressure going to go up? Yeah, probably. You know, the CEO that's about to go deliver this pitch, that it's a $300 million deal.
Yeah.
You know, and they're doing these kind of things on a regular basis.
Lay off 100 people, like that. Just no matter how you try, you know, it could be a real estate deal. Like no matter what, I myself, I feel it.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, why is my heart like? And mentally, I'm fine.
Right.
But like my physiological, like my body is having a reaction, even though you and I would be sitting here talking and no one would know. So I want, like, as soon as you were talking, I'm like, I wonder if that could be it. Like every time your body has, like your heart's pumping or you have some sort of increase, but yet on the outside, everything's calm. Like you wonder if it's something with that.
Which we're meant to be able to do that.
Like the fight or flight.
Yeah.
Kinda, yeah.
Like we're built for that. But consider the situation where, again, you have a really high performing individual that's in this situation on a regular time. It's kind of like, I've worked with former special forces guys. So like, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, same. I can't talk much about it, but I've had these guys where I've tested them and such, and their labs and their imaging, totally different compared to, your regular person.
Wow.
Because of the situations that they've been in and mentally hardened themselves enough where, hey, I got this. But their body, you look at it, it shows a different story.
Oh my gosh, it's such a different mindset. Like any of our military, which anybody that's listening, thank you so much for everything that you do for our country. Our police officers, I love our police officers. Like what they do goes against human physiology. Like it's like there's an issue, a challenge, and you're running towards it as opposed to running away from it. Like the amount of training your body and your mind to do that and what it must do to your insides would have to be visible. So that's so interesting that obviously it is when you are scanning somebody like that. Is there anything for that the number one thing that you see? I can't even say the word. What was the thing called?
The aortic dilation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything that maybe anyone could do preventatively before they get in front of you to say, okay, you know what, I probably fit in this demographic. What can I do?
The number one thing is actually take their blood pressure.
Okay.
Not in a crazy way like, buy a blood pressure cuff and check it every day. Doesn't have to be that far. But just get a baseline. See where someone's blood pressure is at, especially when you're over 40. Because that's when things are actually, body's starting to change a bit. That's really the number one thing. And then if it looks okay, cool, keep an eye. Keep an eye on a regular basis and such.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to the same things. So appropriate sleep, appropriate hydration, keeping stress under control, keeping about an 80% clean diet, loving yourself and loving other people. Like that's a big part of health that we really, I think, forget quite a bit
Yeah.
Especially we have these phones, so like we're like more connected but less connected than ever before.
I know, it's so true. And that has to take a toll as well. Like I know there's all kind of studies. Some people say they omit things, some people say they don't. There's your house, and there's now these things where you can go online and like see how many towers are by your house and cell disruptions that you can happen. I don't know, like to the truth or the extent.
There's some truth to that.
Is there really?
There's actually, I mean, we never read it because it comes in the package insert.
Yeah.
But there's like, it's
in the phone?
Yeah, it's in like micro print. It actually says like, don't hold it up to your head for long periods of time. Wow. It says don't keep it in the same pocket all the time, like move it around. I mean, it's a little.
So they're literally telling you.
Oh yeah, it's a little radiation box
it's
right
so
here.
interesting. So my prior life, I'm on this differently now, but in my prior life, it was up all the time because texting wasn't as popular. I would be holding it. And probably halfway through the day, I'd be like, man, and I'd put it, now it wasn't probably like this iPhone. Like I even remember it when it was the flip phone and the BlackBerry.
Motorola StarTAC. I love that thing. Yeah.
Oh my, if they had BlackBerry, I'd get another BlackBerry. Yeah. Like I love feeling the buttons. I could look at you and text at the same time. You can't do that on an iPhone, but it would literally hurt my ear. And I know everyone uses these AirPods.
Yeah, the AirPods.
I can't do it. It gives me a headache when I wear them, but I know people that can wear them. Is there something in the AirPod is it maybe only certain people that it affects than others, or is that long-term use kind of the same?
So you get radiation with all of it. Like even with the old-fashioned earbuds that you plug in.
Yes.
Radiation travels up the actual cord. Yeah. So there's radiation. There's different levels of it.
Yeah.
With the earbuds, so now you have, within this little gizmo, there's a battery, there's a transmitter, like all that stuff. So it's going to be less compared to holding this up to your head. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's radiation.
There's a magnet, right? Because don't they like magnetize inside of the little container?
Snap into the little container.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, the earpods with the cord didn't seem to affect me as much, but I still didn't like them. I always just think like, what if we just listen to our bodies more? Like I always felt like your body's telling you something, but we're just moving so fast that we're not listening.
We ignore it.
Yeah. And I think that's the same way with food. Like if people just ate and then paused to, how do I feel? Like, how do I genuinely feel? Do I feel sluggish? Do I feel energetic? Like, do I just want to crash on the couch? Like, and just do more of what your body knows. Like if you crave something, there's probably a reason that you're craving something, unless you're addicted to it. Like cheese is very addicting, right? Sugar is very addicting.
Very much.
Is there anything people can do that they want to make these changes, don't really know where to start, or what maybe the best first kind of steps are? I know it was really tough, like for my dad to like completely overhaul his diet.
Yeah.
Back in 2014. And I remember I was in the hospital with him then, and I remember saying, and he was laughing when they gave him his heart healthy diet. He was like, oh yeah, right. Like 1 egg a month and I can't ever eat meat again. And I remember I looked at him dead in the eye and I said, oh yeah, this is real funny because you almost died. Yeah. So you'd rather eat a steak than live for another 30 years to be with me. And it was like that. Like from that, I don't think he's ever eaten red meat since then. He used to always only eat his 1 or 2 eggs a month. And then we kind of read some studies that maybe that's not 100% needed. So we started incorporating, but no sausage, like none of the super processed high fat stuff.
Sure.
But he had reason to go cold turkey. Not everybody has that diagnosis yet. So is there maybe people that are just listening and they're like, I want to make some small changes. What are some of the first things I can do?
I think the first thing is you have to be honest with yourself of just how you are as a person. So there's some people that they're like a light switch. They're either all in on something or they're all out.
Yeah.
There's other people where it's like, you try to make a big change all of a sudden and you're setting yourself up for failure. So that's really I think the first thing is just be honest with yourself. Like, what do you think will work best for you? Mm-hmm. And then once you have that, then that really is going to determine the next step of action. So if you're a start small person, cool. Start with like just one thing. Mm-hmm. If you're eating McDonald's once a week, maybe that's the place to start.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to not eat McDonald's once a week. And then once you've become victorious over that after about 2 or 3 weeks, and that habit has changed, then move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the folks look for a solution so often.
Yes.
Like what is the one solution? Mm-hmm. And really, so many of these things, the answer is, well, what's going to work for you? Mm-hmm. And so if you have that conversation with yourself of what am I willing to do, not willing to do?
This reminds me so much of wealth because like what you're saying too, it depends on the person. It depends on the situation. It's the same way with money. Everybody wants this like magic bullet, quick fix. But it really goes down to the fundamentals that most people think are boring, so they don't want to do it. So it's like the latest craze, right? Same thing with health. Oh, the latest South Beach or Carnival or whatever is the latest thing is going to fix it. Same thing with, oh, it's crypto. It's this, it's this It's like, no, the fundamentals are still there.
Exactly.
It's like, just do the work and you'll get the result. So I love that. And I think that that's sage advice. And I did hear one thing you said on Brad's podcast where you shared about how you cheat. Because you did say, I know you're a foodie. You've shared that with me before.
Yeah.
But you have a way that you cheat once a week that I've never heard you said in all of I've never heard you say this in all of our conversations, but that there's a reason that you'll just do one meal as opposed to a day. Can you share why? Because I think anyone that works out, they think they should have a whole cheat day.
Yes.
But what's your philosophy behind it?
So I'm one of these types of people where I'm like a light switch. I'm either all in, all out, right? So I have to basically really kind of force myself to eat well. Because left to my own devices, I mean, it'd be peanut butter cups every day. I mean, it's, So what I do is, during the work week, Monday through Friday, I'm exercising, I'm hydrating, I'm trying to get to bed at a decent hour, doing all those things, and eating clean those days. And then usually it's Friday or Saturday night. I'll take my kids out to dinner, and we'll have whatever we want. And so when I'm going to have a cheat meal, I cheat intentionally to the point where I'm almost sick. And this may not work for everybody, but it works for me because what it does is it basically creates kind of an aversion to cheating on it. So
because wouldn't you just feel so gross?
I feel gross.
Yeah.
So example for you. So this was, I think, last week. So we went out for pizza, right? So went out for pizza, had like 4 pieces of pepperoni pizza, drank a Coke with it, and then I was like, let's go get ice cream.
Oh my gosh.
So then we go for frozen yogurt. And I mean, I pile all the things on that I want. Like this thing, it was one of these places where,
you weigh it.
You weigh it, right? So I mean, the weight on this sucker was it was impressive.
It's like $35 for your ice cream, Dr.
And
Floyd.
so my daughters are like, Dad, are you gonna eat all that? And there was no way I could finish this thing.
Oh my gosh.
But I got to the point where I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
So that it was so much easier the next day to get up and be on track. Because I grossed myself out.
Yeah, that's so true.
Now, again, where did this come from? Because I had a conversation with myself after failing over and over and over. I was a chubby kid. I struggled with weight my entire life. I mean, I didn't start getting things together until I was about 36, that I came up with this where I had to have a conversation with myself and say, okay, look, dude, what are you willing to do and what not to do? Really? What's the answer here? This was the version I came up with.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I also heard you say something about the caloric load.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So if you start looking at, we're taught this whole idea of calories in a day, right? So example, for a 175 pound, 6 foot or 5'8" man, 2,000 calories a day. If you start looking at calories per week, it's a different mentality. And it makes more sense because if you think about it, if Thanksgiving, you go hard on Thanksgiving Day, right? You don't suddenly gain 5 pounds in a day. You weigh yourself a couple days later, you'll see that there's been some change.
Right.
So it's not so much in a day, it's really in a week.
The week.
And there's so much more flexibility that way because that way you can incorporate in if you want to fast a day. If you're going to have a day where, oh man, it was really stressful and you know what? I stress ate. Now you don't have to beat yourself up about it. You get back on track the next day.
Yeah.
And if you look at this instead where it's, okay, calories over a week, that's really what's going to make the difference. It gives some more space for folks to, it's
be flexible.
Driving, that you can kind of stay in your lane.
Gives you a little more guardrails.
100%.
Yeah. And so when people are wanting to, and again, I think it's personality. I'm so an all or none person. So I just prefer not to cheat because then I won't develop the habit of cheating. So my whole thing is every day, those little Dove dark chocolates, just one little piece, or I like that Hue chocolate. There's a couple really great organic chocolates. If I can just have one piece, I will eat clean all day, but give me that at the end of the night, I'm good. Yep. And then if I do that, otherwise I feel deprived. And then it's I want to go hard on whatever. And it's normally like fries or something like that. Like I'm not a pizza. I think I had so much pizza as a kid. I'm like, no more pizza. I don't ever want pizza. But like it's the fries thing or sweet potato fries or stuff like that, which is definitely not good to do long term. So I think that's important to know what's your personality type. And then be able to adapt in there. So, but that's really, I love this. I could literally continue this conversation for another hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. And I always like to just kind of wrap up the show with one signature question. And I'm really interested to hear what your answer is. But obviously it's generation wealth. And we're talking a lot about health, which is wealth. But what is your definition at this point in your life? What is your definition of the word wealth?
It's... at this point, it's different compared to even what it was just a few years ago. And I'd like to think it's because maybe I've gotten a little bit wiser. And really what wealth is the relationships that you have.
I love that.
Now, years ago, it was monetary. And that was really that path that I really looked towards because I didn't grow up wealthy. Twice as an adult, I've been completely broke. So it was really looking for that security, I think, with this financial security. But what I've come to find is that the more high quality relationships that you have in your life, not only the more enriching your life is and the more meaning and purpose that it brings to your life, but you can do the same for other people. And when you do that, financial wealth just kind of comes naturally.
Yeah, so true. Isn't that true? I love that. And I second that so much. I can't wait personally to get this done. You took care of my dad first because I felt he was more important than me, but I personally can't wait to work with you. And I know so many other people will want to do this. So you can just share. Obviously, this might not be for everyone because it is very high touch. It's not like going in for a $50 copay. Like this is all of your things. And this isn't something people need to do, like all the time, right? This is kind of like a yearly or every couple years thing. But just share where can they find out more and maybe even apply to get this type of work done.
Yeah, so you can go to davidboydmd.com and just go there. You can fill out the application link and my team will get in touch if it looks like we're a fit.
Awesome. Yeah. I love this. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing all of your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
With the audience. This has been great. I appreciate you.
Same here.
And don't forget that if you didn't buy a copy yet of Wealth Habits, it is now available on Audible. And thank you so much for all of your support because we are #1 bestseller, new release in multiple categories. And of course, if you already have a copy of the book and downloaded it and listened to the book, please consider leaving a 5-star review over on Amazon. It would mean the world to me, as well as many other readers that need this information. Okay, guys, that's it for today. We'll see you next time on Generation Wealth.